Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here by the grace of God. Nothing is working. Blake's lighting is out. You know what else isn't going to work this week? Let's just get right to it. Whatever Ball State does against Georgia, because Georgia left some effort out there, I guess. I don't know if that's a good way to put it or not. To use a term our dear friend Blaine Gilmer uses, played with its food a little bit in a win over UT Martin. They ended up 49-7. But frankly, Georgia did not get its 17th points until 3 seconds left in the half. And frankly, was up 7-0 until about 4:29 left in the second quarter. All that to say, Georgia won going away. We saw Ball State last week against Kentucky. Kentucky didn't play great, but still won in a blowout. I'll just give you the numbers, okay? Here's what everybody says about this game. Vegas has got Georgia as a 42.5-point favorite with the 52.5-point over-under, making for an implied final of 48-5. I want to see Ball State score 5 points. That's what I'm looking for in this one. FPI has got Georgia as a 38-point favorite, and Sagarin's got Georgia is 36. Any reason to think Ball State keeps this competitive?
Well, I mean, look, as we said, I think going back to last week, I think there was, and Blaine talked about it in our reaction stuff we did Saturday night. There were some things that you didn't love to see from Georgia. The offensive line certainly, did not play up to the standard I think that the expectation was. And so, so if Ball State's going to get those 5 points, Chris, if they're going to get a safety, they have to get through that offensive line. But I would think it just was one of those week one games, right? And we've seen that before from Georgia. Wasn't it the Kent State game last year that felt that way? I don't know if this will be that game. I think, again, there were a lot of things Kirby could take from that week one game. And remember, as we talked about, they still won whatever it was, right? And still won going away. But it's just that's what you expect from Georgia now. You expect them to dominate in every phase. And no, they didn't do that. And so I think it's one where coaching staff will have their attention coming out against this Ball State team who, like we said, what a brutal start, having to go at Kentucky and then at Georgia to start the season. I think just kind of looking at that Kentucky game last week, Ball State got off to a fine start, right? Like they were up at the end of the first quarter, but Kentucky's speed and playmaking ability just kind of took over. And you know what? I think that's probably going to be the same thing here where you just talk about the playmaking ability that Georgia has and just the speed and those kind of things. I think probably find a way to take over and, maybe see Georgia with a little bit more of a complete performance here. Whereas last week you could probably pick apart a few things that you weren't exactly pleased with, even in a blowout win.
When Ball State's got the ball, last week it averaged 2.6 yards per rushing play. Georgia gave up 4.7, which is a little surprising. Ball State averaged 5.9 per passing play. Georgia gave up 3.6. Look, Georgia's defense is loaded. Ball State starting quarterback was 15 of 21 for $165, 1 touchdown last week. They also played Lane Hatcher, who I thought was going to be their starter. I don't know what else to say. Georgia's defense is probably historically good, and Ball State was not very good a week ago against a pretty good Kentucky team.
Yeah, Caden Samanza, their quarterback, Ball State. I thought, like we said, we were talking about Lane Hatcher winning the season, but Samanza was the one that, wound up playing the most. And I thought he did some good things. I thought he looked pretty good at times. And I think, like we said, remember they were out without Brady Hunt, who's probably, like I said, one of the best tight ends in that conference. And so I think that was something. Koziol, the other tight end, someone else that I think was he get injured in that game? He had 8 receptions. Marquez Cooper, we talked about the offensive ability of him for Ball State. Couldn't really break away. 15 carries for 33 yards. So again, if you're going to make a big time, if you're going to be a threat to a team like Georgia or Kentucky, you've got to have big plays, and they just didn't get a lot of those just huge plays, right? And it's just hard to grind your way to a win. You need those kind of home run type plays to stay in it. And so they got some solid pieces on the offense, like we talked about going to that Kentucky game for Ball State. But yeah, it's just, I think, a lot to be determined against a team like Georgia.
All right. Georgia broke in Carson Beck on offense a week ago. Again, started slowly, ended better than it started. Georgia gave up, let's see, Georgia last week, well, it had 10 yards pass play and 5.3 per rush play if you take out sacks. Sorry, I had my numbers in the wrong place. Took me a minute, because what else could go wrong at this point? All right. Carson Beck, again, was a little slow to start, but they've got weapons for days. They got Brock Bowers. They've got a great receiving core. They got a tremendous offensive line. You would have liked to see the running game a little more assertive, I guess. Nobody really stood out. Kendall Milton, 9 for 54. Roderick Robinson, 8 for 50. Not bad, but Georgia probably could dominate a little more in a spot like that. But anyway, Georgia, I don't know how creative Georgia will get this week. Conference game coming up against South Carolina next week. But again, I think the slow start could have gotten people's attention a little bit, and I'm interested to see how Georgia approaches this one.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the offensive line was the most disappointing part, right? And that probably played a key in some of the other areas maybe not being exactly what. But I mean, I think it just, to me, this is okay. It's game 2 for Carson Beck, and it gets another game under his belt, and you see, offensive line, which talked about going the season. Was it Jake and Blaine were talking about? They said Georgia's offensive line, the best position group of any single position group in the SEC. They didn't look like it in week 1, but I think they come out here with something to prove, and I think that'll make the offense look a lot smoother. And again, just getting another game of reps for Carson Beck is always a good thing, and we know he's got a very talented group to work with on the outside. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot more to add. I think Georgia should put up some points here. We saw Kentucky put up 44. Of course, one of those came on a kickoff return from Barry and Brown. But yeah, I think, Ball State's defense wasn't terrible. But like I said earlier, I just think the playmaking ability and the speed and just the options themselves give Georgia a chance to put up points here. So,
yeah, they do. Let me tell you what the computers and others say. You've got, again, a spread 42.5. ESPN's FPI's got Georgia at a 38-point favorite. Sagarin's got them 36. We may have covered that earlier. My apologies. In any case, everything's pointing to a 30 to 40-something point Georgia win, and you would have to do some pretty good convincing to tell me it's going to be anything other than that.
yep, seems to be in that case, like we said, it's has a lot of points. I mean, it's 42.5, 43 has a lot of points. But yeah, I think, again, for game 1, probably didn't go perfectly for Georgia, right? But I think Kirby Smart's okay with that because he can use
Yeah.
that going into game 2, and you still win by 41 points. They didn't cover the 51-point spread, Chris, in week 1. So maybe they come out here with something to prove. I just think the areas that you could say they were sloppy in, I think they'll be significantly better this week because that's just what we expect from a team that has this standard and is the 2-time defending national champion.
Week 1's can be rough, man. They can be rough on your technology too.
We're sorry, folks. We try and we put these videos out. We know sometimes we got technical issues, but this week we've had technical issues.
Oh,
So
everybody.
we're doing our best, but we appreciate you guys.
The technology world has gone Old Testament on us this week because it has been like 10 plagues everywhere you can imagine. All right. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. We're going to preview every single football game this year involving Southeastern Conference and FBS teams. Best way to get that, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.